Business continuity planning tips: how to create a preparedness strategy and disaster proof your small business. If you want to keep your business operationally active after a disaster, you can't just hope for the best and rely on good luck. When the unforeseen happens, having a proper business continuity plan, or BCP, in place can help you keep your doors open and get back to business as usual. You won't be able to predict when or if a disaster may strike, but you can take proactive steps to protect your business. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of the Awesome Sweetie Kiwi Show. I'm very happy to have you today. I hope you are doing marvelous. If you're doing as fantastic as I am, go grab a cup of coffee or tea or vodka and let's roll. Today I want to talk to you about BCP and how to create a preparedness strategy and disaster-proof your small business. Step 1, create a BCP management committee. Now, I don't care how small or big your small business is, right? Because we have, according to the Small Business Administration criteria, you can have a small business that has up to 500 employees, right? So no matter how small, tiny, or mid-size your business is, you need to have a BCP management committee. Now, according to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, your preparedness plan should address the physical safety of anyone on the premises, including those with disabilities. You also want to develop instructions for continuing business with minimal disruption, right? So to start with your planning, FEMA suggests a few things. You need to form a committee, as I said earlier, a committee or department charged with developing and maintaining your business preparedness plan. Now, you need to budget for whatever contingency plans the committee develops. And this is based on your industry, on your history, on your operational history, on the region where you operate, and more importantly, on your own goals. You want to review your small business insurance coverage with your agent to determine if it fits your need. Why? Because the insurance coverage is part of the risk mitigation plan. It is part of the business continuity plan. At some point, if you need funds, if you need operational resources to start over after disaster strikes, you would need some kind of funding. And that money, partially or fully, should come from your insurance company. You want to identify any government or corporate regulations that may affect your plans. For instance, you have OSHA requirements. OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So OSHA requirements may include things like, if you go on the OSHA website, they have a very great catalog, a diverse catalog of all emergencies that may happen depending on the industry. But their key requirements for emergencies include things like means of egress. Now, egress means exit. In terms of when there is a fire, when there's fire or some kind of emergency, you need to show employees and anybody present on the premises the means of egress. You have hazardous, dangerous materials, personal protective equipment, that's PPE, general environmental controls, medical and first aid, fire protection, toxic and hazardous substances. Now, OSHA requirements, as I said earlier, may differ whether you operate in the general industry, in construction, for example, or in the maritime sector, right? If you work on shipyards, marine terminals, and longshoring. The key here is for you to look at the history of your industry, the history of your industry, the history of your company, and sort of study what competitors are doing. It's never late. If you don't have the expertise in-house to form a BCP management committee and develop a strategy, you can always hire an external consultant to come and look into what's really happening and advise you. All right? I'll be right back. Please don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. We are still having a conversation today around business continuity planning, BCP. Step 1 was to form a BCP management committee. Once you have the committee, step 2 should be to create a BCP plan. Now, To create your business preparedness plan. By the way, business continuity planning is the same thing as business preparedness. So if you hear a business continuity plan, it's the same thing as a business preparedness plan. So to start creating a BCP plan, FEMA suggests the following. You need to have a committee, as I said earlier, that needs to gather information about hazards and assess the risk in your company, right? So the risk will include things like events that are more likely to occur in your area. For instance, if your business is located in an area at risk of tornadoes, for instance, of fire, of hurricanes. We had a few viewers who work in California, and last year they told us all the nightmares, all the challenges they had because of wildfire, right? So you need to determine your business preparedness plan based on the region, based on the operational history of the company and the industry. You want to have the committee conduct a business impact analysis to evaluate the likely consequences of a disruption in business, right? So, how much are you losing per day or per week? What are the critical processes that need to operate, that continue functioning? Things like server, IT, right? Things like if you have a factory, are you making sure that the factory keeps rolling, right? For instance, if you take the healthcare industry, hospitals need to have electricity 24/7, right? You cannot afford to have a power outage when people are having an intervention, right? This is a matter of life and death, really. Now, you need to do something called a business impact analysis, or BIA. A business impact analysis, really, what it does is predict the consequences of disruption of a business function and process, and gathers information needed to develop recovery strategies. So what you do, you're trying to identify the consequences of disruption, you're trying to predict them, and you're trying to gather information needed to mitigate that risk, right? Potential loss scenarios should be identified during a risk assessment. So, when you assess the risk, what that means is you need to do a few things. Number one, you need to consider the impact. So your BIA, your business impact analysis, should identify the operational as well as financial impact resulting from the disruption. So if you have a disruption, you got to really think about what are the consequences this disruption can have on your business, not only on your business as a whole, but on the business functions and processes, right? So some factors you need to consider include lost sales and income. As I said earlier, how much money you're losing per week, per day, per month, delayed sales or income, increased expenses. For instance, you have overtime labor, you have expediting cost, outsourcing. Do you have regulatory fines, contractual penalties, or loss of contractual bonuses, right? Because some contracts will stipulate some deadlines, and if you don't meet the deadlines, then you are going to pay. Customer dissatisfaction or defection, delay of new business plans. One thing you also want to think about is the timing and duration of the disruption. Very important. You want to conduct the BIA. Now, how do you conduct the BIA? Very easy. You got to look at your company and look at the critical departments within the company. And what you want to do is you want to use a BIA questionnaire to survey managers and others within the business. Again, you want to tier the department. So you have tier 1 being extremely critical department or processes, tier 2 being critical processes, and tier 3 being less critical. And you want to survey the managers whose departments are not only critical, but whose knowledge is vast enough so they know how the business manufactures its products or provides its services. That's what I mean by critical processes, right? So those are the processes that either are linked to the revenue generation cycle or the expense payment cycle. You want to ask the managers to identify, for instance here, the potential impacts if the business function or process that they're responsible for is interrupted. Okay, And then once you have that, you also need to be able to produce a BIA report. Now, I'm not saying that it's you who has to produce it, but somebody got to be responsible for it, right? Think about it. It's either the BCP committee that you had earlier, or it'll have to be a department, or it can be a consultant. If you hire someone else, then at the end of the day, you need to assign responsibility of that report to someone. So the BIA report should document things like the potential impacts resulting from disruption of the business function and processes. And you want to, in that report, you also need to have a look at the significant business interruption that could arise in terms of financial impact. Anytime you want to analyze a BIA report, always put some dollar sign, right? Because it doesn't really matter for a business to have a report if there is no ensuing, no related or interrelated economic impact. For you as a business manager or a small business owner to make a decision, your team has to be able to quantify the decisions, the impact of any disruption. Another thing you want to pay attention to in the BIA report, the business interruption report, you want to pay attention to the scenarios, the business disruption scenarios. For example, physical damage to a building or buildings, damage to or breakdown of machinery, systems, or equipment. If there is a site or a building that has restricted access, let's say you have a factory and employees they can't really go into the factory for 2 weeks, for instance. If you have an interruption of the supply chain, including failure of a supplier or disruption of transportation or goods from the supplier. If you have utility outage, for instance, you have electrical power outage, damage to loss or corruption of information technology, including voice and data communications, servers, operating systems, applications, computers, and data. If you have employees being absent. So those are, and this list is not exhaustive. Those are a few, this is a limited area of business disruption scenarios you and your team, particularly the BCP committee, should study. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Kiwi. Today we're having a wonderful conversation around business continuity planning tips, and I'm talking to you about how to create a preparedness strategy and disaster-proof your small business. If you like the quality and the clarity of the content so far, I would suggest you, if you haven't already done so, to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. We dropped shows like this every single day, rain or shine. We sort of cover a variety, a mishmash of topics. So, but we pay attention to small businesses, and we give you all the tools and data points, if you will, to run your business properly. So, I've given you 2 steps already, and here is step 3. Evaluate the mitigation tactics within the BCP plan. Once you have the committee, right, that was the first step, and then you prepare the BCP plan. That was step number 2. Number 3 here, step number 3, you need to evaluate the mitigation tactics within the BCP plan. Now, what you want to do is evaluate and consider ways to reduce risk and limit loss through the mitigation plan. Now, what is mitigation? I'm not really trying to get into jargon here, but mitigation is really is the effort to reduce loss of life and property by reducing actually the impact of disasters, right? So in the wake of a disaster, people often wonder if there is anything they can do to protect their family and property from the effect of such devastating losses. So you can have insurance, you can have other operational factors in-house to provide that protection. Mitigation in essence means taking action now to reduce or prevent future damage later. Let me repeat that. This is critical. Mitigation in essence means taking action today to reduce or prevent future damage later, right? This is in essence what insurance does. Now, what I'm asking you to do here is to go a little further. All right. Now, FEMA, if you go to FEMA's website, they have a comprehensive risk mitigation manual that you can adapt to your industry. Right. They have developed something that they have mitigation programs that help reduce the impact of events. And what they do very well is that they catalog any kind of disaster that has happened in the United States in the last 20 years. Okay. And they're able to help you understand local risks, address the hard choices, and invest in the long-term well-being, not only of your employees, but also in the community where you operate. So remember, mitigations are very important. Mitigation actions or plans are important because without them, you're basically jeopardizing your safety, the safety of your employees, the financial security, and your self-reliance, because disaster can happen at any time, at any place. And they have happened at any time, in any place. So that's step 3. So step 3, evaluate the mitigation tactics within the BCP plan. Step number 4, implement your BCP plan. Right? In the first 3 steps, we were just in thinking mode, analytical mode. Now it's time to start implementing what we have analyzed in the first 3 steps. So you want to implement your BCP plan. Now, as I said earlier, you need to have someone being accountable for the BCP effort, and that should be the BCP committee that you have, or the department to which you have assigned that task to. Now, to implement a preparedness program, FEMA states that you will need to identify resources, create plans for managing incidents, and train employees to properly execute those plans. There is another great resource that you can check out if you want to know more. It's called ready.gov. So www.ready.gov. And ready.gov, for instance, suggests that you craft a preparedness plan that addresses resource management, emergency response, crisis communications, business continuity, information technology and data protection, employee assistance, incident management, and training. The last element is as important as the first 5 or 6 or 7 elements. You have to train your employees. You need to train your employees so they know what to do just in case, right? So that's very important. And another thing that I want to mention here that a lot of business owners sort of overlook is the information technology and data protection. You want to have a proper IT risk mitigation plan in place. You want to plan for how you will access your information technology systems and electronic data after an emergency. Folks, we live in a world that is globalized, where somebody can be in San Jose and do business with someone in Shenzhen in China, or Sydney in Australia, or Johannesburg in South Africa. And you're not going to fly. You're not going to get on a plane and just to fly down there to see your business partner. You need to communicate. So IT systems are critical. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of Sweetie Q. We are about to wrap up today's conversation. We are in the last section here, and I just want to continue the conversation and say, listen, if you love the clarity and the quality of the content so far, please like this content. You want to share with the folks who might be interested, and also comment below. We want to hear your experience if you're a small business owner or you have worked at a small company, and basically what you've learned in terms of BCP. Please comment below. Let us know. We want to hear that. We want everybody to engage in the conversation. Step number 5, you want to conduct tests and exercises. It's pretty cool to have a BCP plan, right? This is what everybody wants to have, but you need to conduct tests and exercises. You need to conduct drills occasionally so that you can test and evaluate your plan through a variety of exercises. And those exercises help you determine whether your employees are well versed in the plan and how effective the plan is. This phase may help you train personnel on their responsibilities and evaluate the established plans and procedures according to FEMA. Now, how often should you do this? Really depends again on your company, in the sector, or it depends on the sector you're in. We've seen a lot of companies do this once a year or twice a year, so it's really up to you. Step number 6, update and improve your plan. Right now, please don't put your plan. Don't just take the plan, elaborate a good plan and just shove it somewhere in the closet. No, you need to update and improve the plan. This should be a living document. Your BIA or your BCP plan should be a living document. Now, FEMA, for instance, recommends reviewing your preparedness plan periodically and making any necessary changes. Regular evaluations, such as annual or biannual testing, for instance, can be very helpful in determining whether your plan needs updating, right? The thing is that the federal government notes that times you may need to consider updating your continuity plan include after assessing your company's planned response to the testing exercise, in the event of an actual incident, let's say fire or stuff happens, an explosion at a factory, for instance, and also if you need to do continuing evaluations during times of normal operations. Now, remember that any major changes to the company or personnel may need to include a review of the contingency plan. Right? So this is pretty cool. This is very important. Now, I really pray to God that you don't have to experience a disaster, but it's better. Prevention is much better than cure. So it's better to have a plan in place so that you can get your business back up and running if the unforeseen happens. All right, folks, this was it for today's conversation. I really appreciate you sticking with me, and just want to quickly recap what we talked about. So, business continuity planning tips: how to create a preparedness strategy and disaster-proof your small business. I gave you 6 steps. Step 1, create a BCP management committee. Step 2, create a BCP plan. Step 3, evaluate mitigation tactics within the BCP plan. Step number 4, implement your BCP plan. Step 5, conduct tests and exercises. Step number 6, update and improve your plan. That was it, folks. Wish you a wonderful time. Good luck, and I will see you next time. But until then, remember, stay marvelous.